Thank you very much, Financial Secretary, for joining me here today. We've seen in the global markets following the Dow posting its biggest one-day plunge in history. There, of course, is correction now in the U.S. markets, Asia, a couple of markets in correction territory as well. Do you think that this is an overreaction?
Well, the outbreak of the coronavirus caught everybody by surprise. Initially in China, but now the situation in China seems to have been contained. But somehow this got spread. So I think going forward in terms of supply chain, in terms of consumer spending, that may be affected. But in Hong Kong, we have been trying very hard to fight this disease. Our economy has been hard hit. That's why in the budget we roll out measures to try to help stimulate the economy and to help relieve the burden on our people.
This week you did release your budget, and one of the big headlines was 10,000 Hong Kong dollars in a cash handout. It'll take a few months for the applications to be ready and then the passing out of the money, but it'll be summer before the funds actually reach the Hong Kong permanent residents. Now, there is a percentage of these 7 million eligible residents that don't live in Hong Kong and won't actually be spending to stimulate the economy here in Hong Kong. What do you say to those types of criticisms? How do you respond?
Well, in the immigration department, when they maintain their record of Hong Kong permanent identity card holders, they do not distinguish whether these people are living in Hong Kong or living overseas or living in neighboring cities in Guangdong province. If we are going to institute administrative measures to try to find out, to ask for, say for example, address proof, administratively, it is doable but quite cumbersome. That may have an impact on the timely implementation of this scheme and getting the money to the hands of people. So that's why this time around, initially our thinking is that let's don't make such a distinction and encourage these people to come back to visit their friends and to spend their money there. And we have been hearing the feedbacks from people, and this is something that perhaps we may look further into it, but the initial thinking and put it this way, the overriding objective is to implement the scheme as quickly and as simply as possible.
Any estimates on how much this can spur the economy? Can you quantify it for us?
About 1%, this cash handout scheme. But together with the other relief measures in the budget and also the anti-epidemic funds, and the 4 rounds of measures we have been rolling out since last August, together they would help to stimulate our GDP by about 3%.
Now, you mentioned all the relief packages as well as the stimulus. The government has announced $30 billion last year in 4 rounds. Earlier this month, another 30 billion Hong Kong dollars in anti-epidemic fund. And then this week, 120 billion Hong Kong dollars. You've already forecast 6 consecutive budget deficits. How is the government placed if this virus outbreak does not get control and further aid is needed?
Well, depending on circumstances, fortunately, Hong Kong, we have very strong fiscal reserve. At the moment, our fiscal reserves stand at about 11 billion Hong Kong dollar. Although the coming financial year, we are going to have a huge deficit, but mostly because of the cash handout scheme and the one-off relief measures, which is one time and do not have long-term financial implications. In the future years, yes, on the operating account, we have a deficit to the order of about $50 billion. But on a consolidated basis, the deficit would be around 70 billion to about 8 billion. In the context of a budget of 700 billion, this is relatively small. I would argue that it is perhaps, in the medium-term forecast, it is a broadly balanced budget. And it is up to us in these difficult circumstances to try to revive the economy as quickly as possible. That is why we are rolling out all these measures.
You've warned that this coronavirus outbreak could be worse than the SARS outbreak back in 2003. Back then, we had the Central People's Government rolling out some economic measures. We've had numerous rounds of CEPA. We've also had the introduction of individual tourists coming to Hong Kong. This time around, can Hong Kong emerge without the help of the Central People's Government?
Well, the domestic and external environment and landscape are quite different, as you rightly point out. But at the same time, we do have other advantages that did not exist in the last time round. Say, for example, the Greater Bay Area development, a market of over 70 million people, aggregate GDP about 1.6 trillion US dollar. In this GBA development, say, for example, our financial services is very well placed to take advantage of that. And also, we can also take opportunity of this development to drive the development of our innovation and technology sector. So it is important for us in Hong Kong to work together to overcome the current challenges and to move Hong Kong forward.
Now, if we go on the assumption that the coronavirus will be resolved by this summer, there is still the issue of social unrest in Hong Kong. It's been ongoing for close to 9 months now. What is the government doing to resolve the grievances?
Oh yes, this social incidences did reflect the deep-seated issues in the community. Hong Kong is a place of opportunity. We in Hong Kong here, we share joy and sorrow. Yes, we did have differences, different opinions. Hong Kong may have all sorts of shortcomings, but this is still our home, which allows diversity and freedom of development. So I would appeal to the people of Hong Kong, yes, let's set aside the differences for the moment, work together to face this challenge and move Hong Kong forward. And in the meantime, we can have more dialogue, to seek more mutual understanding, to seek to understand better the perspective of the other side and to try to find a solution forward.
The Legislative Council elections are set for September, following a dismal result in the District Council elections last year for the pro-establishment camp. If there is no resolution to the social issues, how big of a risk is this to your government?
Well, I won't speculate, but we are doing our utmost at the moment to fight the corona disease, to try to stimulate the economy and to help our people. I think it is important for us in this time of difficulty to be united and work together.
Hong Kong's status as a financial hub has been called into question. Is Hong Kong less competitive than it was a year ago?
I do not agree. We suffer temporarily. The social incidents reveal the deep-seated differences. There were disruptions. But the core strength of Hong Kong, the core competitiveness of Hong Kong remain unchanged. In terms of institutional arrangement, one country, two systems, the rule of law, independent judiciary, freedom of expression, freedom of free flow of capital, people, goods, information are still there. And our financial market, if you look at the performance of financial market over the past year, has been very stable. In terms of IPO funds raised, still world number one. So we do have our competitive advantages. I think it is important for us to focus, remain focused, to develop the economy, to take good advantage of our competitive strength, to move the economy forward, to create the space for us to address the different issues.
Hong Kong often gets compared to Singapore. In terms of the coronavirus cases, similar, around 90-odd cases. Hong Kong has closed schools since the Lunar New Year, closed out until April the 20th. Singapore, though, has managed to keep the schools open, and the government there is also providing medical support in terms of paying for medical bills. Is there a risk that expats or businesses will leave Hong Kong?
It may not be too appropriate to compare these two economies. Our proximity with China, the flow of people, the economic integration between Hong Kong and the mainland are very different. So I think from the Hong Kong SAR government's standpoint, with the advice of the experts, do our very best to prevent the spreading of this virus, and at the same time gradually recover in terms of reviving all the different activities, and in the meantime get ourselves prepared to stimulate the economy.
Property, retail, and the financial markets are key pillars of Hong Kong's economy, but also highly dependent that of China. Is there a need, as China slows, to lessen our reliance on mainland China?
Well, there are opportunities and challenges. I think we have to focus on the opportunities and the areas that we have competitive advantage, and to maximize their opportunities. Financial services is one area, innovation and technology is the other, and also in terms of high value added logistics, we have very strong competitive advantage in those areas. So I think the formula for success in the future, as compared with the time of SARS, would be very different. But well, the world is changing. It is up to us to identify the opportunities and where we stand better chance to succeed and focus our energy and resources into those areas.
Financial Secretary, good luck and all the best in, of course, helping Hong Kong. And thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Emily.